earlier this week, the Trump administration rescinded a memo freezing all federal funding, but the move has spawned confusion, fear across several sectors, including biotech, where the loss of research funds could have a huge impact. Joining us now to help us understand how to play the sector is Mara Goldstein, Clear Street Director of Research and Senior Equity Analyst, Biotech. Mara, great to see you. You're on set. So let's start there, Mara. You know, the back and forth with the federal funding. Walk us through how you were thinking through that and what it could mean for the sector you cover.
Sure, I think it's a little bit of optics right now. Clearly, you know, any disruption is typically bad unless it involves dismantling regulation. So, you know, the surprise announcement that all of a sudden all federal grants will be frozen, you know, you have to take a sort of a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. The reality is for the biotech industry, while research is the lifeblood of this industry, a lot of the research is being federally funded. It's not directly related to biotech's necessarily, but it does cause a bit of a hiccup because, you know, there are labs that are being funded that are working with biotech and pharmaceutical companies. There are clinical trials that are being funded through federal grants that are being run through, you know, big hospital administrations. So it just adds a layer of uncertainty. You know, companies that we talk to have certainly indicated that they think that this will pass, but it just, you know, in an environment that is, as you know, fraught with unknowns, it just doesn't help to have one more.
And what are kind of the other things that you're watching from the administration? You know, we've got day 2 of hearings to decide if RFK Jr. will be confirmed as HHS secretary. You've got other, you know, regulatory stuff sort of percolating. What's sort of most pertinent? Is it pricing issues? What do you think?
So I think we're walking a bit of a tightrope to some degree, and this is what our team thinks. You know, there's multiple areas that are being sort of explored all at the same time. So you have some nominees that are not necessarily science friendly, but maybe are more friendlier from a regulatory perspective. And so on the one hand, you know, it's better for companies if there's a less of a regulatory burden. On the other hand, it's not great for companies if they're, you know, anti-science, you know, if you will. So I think we have to, you know, see how all of this plays out. But ultimately, you know, the factors that drive this industry are the ability to get drugs developed and to market, for companies to be able to create synergies, for M&A to happen. So there is a prevailing thought that the Trump administration will be friendlier from a acquisition perspective, from an FTC perspective, and that is good. You know, if you look at, there's already been a couple mid-size acquisitions that have occurred this year. So the sectors that struggle the most under the idea that we're in this environment that's less friendly to new technology are things like, you know, vaccines and genetic therapies and whatnot. But, you know, it's a process to really implement any change. So the market is right to have some, I guess, uncertainty to it. But I think, you know, our analysts feel that a lot of this will wash out as we get through the year. We're in the middle of sort of chaos, if you will, for the next few weeks, and then things probably settle down.
I am curious though, Mara, let's say the Senate did approve RFK Jr. What could he actually do, Mara? Do you think, do you think your sector you cover would even be in focus for him? He would have a lot on his plate.
Well, he does have a lot on his plate. Remember, it's not just about, you know, it's not just about biotech companies, but there are concerns about things like, you know, using genetic technologies, fetal tissue, and those have come in and out of focus for the government over the last 20 years. And so some would argue that when the government softened its stance on being able to use, you know, human tissues, that created essentially the modern genetic gene therapy industry. So there are things, but it is a process that has to happen. There will be a knee-jerk reaction. There will be uncertainty to any type of new legislation, for sure.
All right, let's get to some picks from you and your team. And I don't know that there's any theme with these picks, except in biotech, you just have to look for the products that seem like they have the most promise, right? So one of your picks is a company called Enliven, which is developing a drug to treat a type of leukemia. Tell me why you guys are focusing on that one.
So our analyst who covers that stock, her name's Kaveri Pullman, she thinks that it is really an opportunity to be disruptive. The data looks really good. This is a big area in clinical focus and also commercial development. I mean, you can't turn on your TV these days without seeing an advertisement for some type of autoimmune and inflammatory disease. So these are big commercial friendly markets. and blood cancers as well are areas where you see this as well. There just have been so many improvements in terms of how patients can be treated, and so being able to have a drug in the market that has a clinical advantage really does mean that you can get sort of priority positioning for it. And so Kaveri's universe is very focused on finding best in class, and she believes that this is a company that has that potential.
What about Mara Protagonist, PTGX, which has had a nice run already? It's about 50% over the past 2 months.
And it's the same thing. They've had good data. They're developing drugs in big consumer-friendly markets, and they have the ability to put drugs in the market that can potentially be best in class.
And then looking at some of the other picks that you're looking at, again, it's so interesting when we talk about biotech names because they're not household names, right? I guess the hope is that one day their drugs will be at least household names in certain populations here. Delcath is another one that you're looking at here, and they make a drug called, I'm going to hazard a stab at this one,
Hepzato, yes.
Hepzato. What does that do?
So this is a company, and our analyst Bill Maughan covers this company. This is a company that has this drug. It's a small drug for a small oncology indication, but the point I think for him is that they're commercially executing very well, and so they have the ability through not just this execution but improvements in in the technology over time to bring additional drugs to market, and that widens the therapeutic area. So you sort of have a tale of two different kinds of companies. On the one hand, you have companies working in big markets like Kaveri's company. On the other hand, this company that Bill covers are working in smaller niche markets where you can command premium pricing. You know exactly who the patient population is, how to target them very exquisitely.
Interesting.
Mara, thanks for your time, those picks.
Thank you.
Thank you.